Welcome to this CipherVibe Cloud Security Guide. Today, we will make session cookie security, step-by-step guide for 2026 practical, prioritized, and connected to how real cloud environments are operated. Session authentication turns one login event into a continuing browser relationship, so the real security work is lifecycle control. This episode covers secure cookies, server-side session state, CSRF, session fixation, rotation, logout, revocation, idle timeout, absolute timeout, and evidence. The purpose is not to memorize a collection of service names. It is to build a mental model you can apply when accounts, teams, workloads, and threats change. We will define the core ideas, walk through a repeatable security workflow, examine mistakes that frequently create exposure, design useful safeguards, and finish with a practical hardening roadmap. Pause when you need to. Write concepts in your own words, record observations, and distinguish what the evidence proves from what you are merely assuming. That habit is more valuable than rushing through another tool demonstration. Start with 4 concepts that provide the vocabulary for session cookie security, step-by-step guide for 2026. First, a browser session should represent a verified identity, a known client context, a lifetime, an activity window, and a revocation path. Second, cookies need protective attributes because browser storage and cross-site behavior directly affect session theft and request forgery risk. Third, session identifiers are bearer credentials. If an attacker steals a valid session cookie, the application may treat them as the user. Fourth, logout is a server-side security event, not just deleting local browser state, when the server keeps session state or refresh credentials. Fifth, sensitive actions should require step-up or re-authentication when the session is old, risky, newly recovered, or from a new device. Sixth, session evidence should connect login, device, IP, user agent, risk signals, session ID, revocation, and downstream actions. Do not study these as isolated definitions. Ask which asset or business service is involved, where the relevant trust boundary sits, which identity performs the action, and what reliable evidence would show that the control worked. Security reasoning is a chain. Source evidence supports an observation. The observation supports a conclusion. The conclusion informs a proportionate decision. The decision has an owner, an expected result, and a way to verify it. When any link is missing, say so. A professional explanation can include uncertainty without becoming vague. For example, a network record may prove that 2 addresses communicated, but it may not prove which human initiated the action or whether the content was malicious. Now turn the mental model into a repeatable workflow. First, map the session lifecycle from login to cookie issue, request validation, renewal, rotation, idle timeout, absolute timeout, logout, and emergency revocation. Second, identify every storage location: browser cookie, server-side store, cache, refresh token store, mobile web view, load balancer, and identity provider. Third, set cookie attributes intentionally: HTTP only, secure, same site, path, domain, lifetime, and host-only behavior where possible. Fourth, protect state-changing requests with CSRF defenses, origin checks, same-site behavior, and framework-level validation. Fifth, rotate session identifiers after login, privilege change, recovery, MFA enrollment, password change, and suspicious context change. Sixth, test timeout, logout, back button behavior, concurrent sessions, stolen cookie simulation, fixation attempts, and revocation propagation. Before acting, define the objective, scope, owner, and success condition. Collect the smallest amount of trustworthy evidence needed to understand the situation. Preserve timestamps and sources so another person can follow your reasoning. Priorities should be explainable. Consider exposure, identity and privilege, sensitive data, business importance, exploit conditions, existing safeguards, reversibility, and confidence. A dramatic label should never replace that analysis. The workflow does not end when a command succeeds, a ticket closes, or a dashboard turns green. Verify the new state with fresh evidence. Check for recurrence and for side effects introduced by the change. This disciplined loop, observe, interpret, decide, act, verify, and learn, appears in every cybersecurity specialty. Understanding failure modes will protect you from attractive but unreliable shortcuts. First, session fixation lets an attacker set or reuse a known session identifier before the victim authenticates. Second, missing HTTP-only or secure flags can expose cookies to client-side script or clear text transport. Third, weak same-site and missing CSRF controls can allow unwanted state-changing requests from another site. Fourth, long idle and absolute lifetimes make stolen sessions useful for too long. Fifth, logout that only clears the browser can leave server-side sessions active. Sixth, distributed systems can make revocation inconsistent when caches, regions, gateways, and identity providers disagree. These mistakes often share one cause: confusing an available signal with a complete explanation. A tool can report a finding, a successful action, or a score while important scope, context, ownership, and verification remain missing. Also resist copying commands without understanding their inputs, outputs, permissions, and side effects. Run one controlled change at a time and record what happened. If an exercise does not behave as expected, that is useful evidence. Stop, inspect the environment, revise the hypothesis, and explain the difference. Good security work is not a performance of certainty, it is careful reasoning under imperfect information. Reliable security uses layers because no single control can prevent every failure. First, use HTTP-only, secure, same site, narrow domain, narrow path, and sensible lifetime for session cookies. Second, rotate session IDs after authentication and major trust changes, then invalidate the old identifier. Third, use idle and absolute timeout, plus re-authentication for sensitive actions and risky context changes. Fourth, use CSRF tokens, origin checks, framework protections, and same-site configuration for state-changing browser requests. Fifth, build reliable logout and emergency revocation that reaches the session store, refresh credentials, and edge caches. Sixth, alert on session reuse from unusual locations, impossible travel, many concurrent sessions, suspicious user agent changes, and sensitive actions after risk signals. For each important risk, ask 5 questions. What makes the event less likely? What evidence would reveal it? Who can contain it? How will trustworthy operation be restored? Who owns the decision and accepts remaining risk? Least privilege applies to people, applications, devices, automation, data stores, and administrators. Access should be scoped, separated, monitored, reviewed, and removed when it is no longer needed. Every important control needs a test strategy. Include representative normal activity, negative cases, misuse, dependency failure, and rollback. A written policy is not evidence that a technical or operational control works. Finally, preserve the evidence trail from observation through decision, action, and verification. That history supports investigations, audits, lessons learned, and honest measurement. Turn this episode into a practical hardening plan. Start with inventory. Write down every place this authentication pattern appears, who owns it, what data it can reach, where credentials are stored, how it is revoked, and which logs prove normal or suspicious use. Then reduce the biggest exposure first. Remove stale access, shorten lifetimes where possible, narrow scope, protect storage, add recovery or revocation paths, and make sure high-risk workflows require stronger proof. Next, test abuse cases. Do not only test the happy path. Test stolen credentials, expired credentials, replay, reset, or recovery abuse, wrong audience, wrong issuer, missing logs, disabled controls, and emergency revocation. Finally, measure progress with cookies missing protective flags, revocation propagation time, sessions older than policy, sensitive actions without step-up, suspicious session reuse alerts. Each metric needs an owner, a reliable source, a review cadence, and a known limitation. Strong authentication security is a repeatable operating rhythm. Choose the right pattern, reduce credential theft, validate every token or session, protect recovery, centralize evidence, secure machine identity, and rehearse response. For chapter markers and primary links, open the description. For more evidence-based cybersecurity research, visit CipherVibe.com and subscribe to CipherVibe. Copyright 2026 CipherVibe. All rights reserved. This briefing is general education. Validate controls with authorized administrators in your own environment.